Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and Doctor of Thinkology, Alyx King here. Kelly Pretty may or may not be along. We're not really sure, but we'll find out soon. Anyway, it's Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019. 4 p.m. in New York, 1 p.m. in Los Angeles, 9 p.m. in London, Sydney, Australia. You're looking at 8 a.m. And wherever you are in the world, thank you for sharing some time with us and joining us for another episode of LOA Today. You are a daily dose of happy. And I can just tell from my preliminary chat with Alex while we were setting everything up. She's happy. She's in a very happy zone. Smiles on the face.
Aren't I always?
Well, today especially, it's like you're just, like there's rainbows coming out of your hair, which is not surprising because your hair is always changing color. But today, there's especially.
Well, that's because I had an excellent weekend.
An excellent weekend. See, that's not
Excellent
a good weekend or a great weekend. That's an excellent weekend.
Yes, a very excellent weekend.
Anything you can tell us about, or is it all private? I don't want to.
Oh, no, it's not private, no. So Sunday, the Super Bowl, I mean, not the Super Bowl, but the AFC Championships happened to be my mother's birthday. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, she turned 65. I don't know if she wants me to say that, but she turned 65, but she looks amazing, so you can't tell.
Sorry.
It's already out there. These are the things, Ma. I'm famous. You got to get used to it.
Welcome to social media.
You're right. So we celebrated her birthday. We went out instead of going to dinner because of the monsoon that happened on Sunday. We decided we're going to stay in and eat. And so Mike, my boyfriend, decided he was going to go out and buy filet mignon and all this fancy stuff and cook it.
Ooh.
So while he was cooking, I was upstairs doing laundry and my dog starts barking and I'm like, I don't know why my dog is barking. And I'm like, they're doing construction down the street, so has to do with that. Next thing you know, I turn around in my bedroom, my brother shows up out of nowhere and I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like freaking out because I haven't seen him since August and he lives in Miami. So he just popped out of nowhere.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a big deal then. Yeah, we're not talking around the block.
No, yeah. He's like, he was texting us earlier on the group chat and he was like, hey, did my present get there yet? Like he was totally messing with us. And I was like, see, you're the present. And he's like, yeah, I'm the present. I was like, oh my God. So we ended up having a great dinner. We watched the nail biter of a game. And yeah, I got to hang out with my brother this weekend. And my brother got to meet Mike. So that was a good thing. So it was great.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I can tell why you're so excited. You had all these great things happening, and your brother's showing.
I love my brother. I miss him so much. So it was good to see him.
That's nice. Yeah, coming up from Miami too. That's not a small trip.
Yeah, and it's not a small feat either because he's a very busy man. Like he owns his own gym. So to get time off to just surprise us for my mom's birthday is like, it's a big deal. Big deal.
It's special.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of makes up for you outing your mom's age because clearly she's very loved. There's no doubt.
Well, she looks amazing for her age. That's why I can say her age because people are always like, no, she's not 65. Stop it. I was like, if I'm 35 and she had me, she's got to be up there. So,
Well, we were talking before the show about dad jokes. You obviously haven't heard the jokes about, I was like 9 years old when I had you or something like that.
Yeah. We don't play that in my family.
We don't play that one, no. Okay.
No.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So, please do wish your mom a happy birthday from me. Yeah,
I will.
That she had her family around her. That's great.
Yeah.
That's really spectacular. And you guys had a great weekend. Had fun watching your game and so forth. So, yeah, it sounds really good all the way around.
Yep.
Now, let's see. We have everybody kind of, as usual, crawling in and saying hello and saying hello to each other and so forth. And so it's good to see everybody. I don't see any questions popping in yet. So I think we're going to be doing our usual thing of let's see what we can come up with to talk about, what kind of questions we can bring up. And I don't know about you. I was actually spending a little bit of time. Is this a question? No, it's just another comment. I was spending a little bit of time on Facebook just kind of peeking around, kind of doing some cleanup, actually. And while I was cleaning up, I was seeing questions popping up into my feed from the various groups that I'm a member of. And I have to say, some of the questions that I was seeing were showing pretty high levels of dysfunctionality.
Mm.
People in, bad relationship situations. I mean, there were at least two or three stories. You know how often there are people who are asking, usually younger women,
How do
asking,
I get my
how
ex back?
can I get him back? Well, these
Yeah.
are all stories of they got him back, but it wasn't working, which is not terribly
Exactly.
surprising,
Because you know why that is? Because people mistake the feeling for the person. You want
Mhm.
that feeling back, but you don't necessarily need that person back to have that feeling. You can have that feeling with somebody else.
Exactly. Well, you can have that feeling within yourself too.
Yes.
That's the thing that I keep noticing. They're always, what do they call it? Looking for love in all the wrong places. They look
Yes.
for love outside of themselves.
Yes,
But it starts
exactly.
inside. If it doesn't start
Hmm.
inside, you don't have a chance outside.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you don't love yourself, what do you bring to the table?
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing to bring to the table. You have nothing to give
Exactly.
to somebody else.
Exactly.
Yeah, but nevertheless, I'm seeing a lot of that today. So we may actually also, well, now she had contacted me about when I do the shows with Cindy, and when Cindy's not able to do a show, Didi had indicated she might be interested in coming on sometime. But I've been trying to encourage
Ooh,
join us on any of these shows, and I see that she's listening. So, Didi, if you feel like coming onto the show, feel free. We'd love to have you come in and
I'd
talk with us.
love to meet you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, let's see. Oh, yes. Well, Didi just said it right there. People get stuck on people. That's true.
Yes. Yes.
They do. It's almost like an addiction, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because
But
with an
it,
addiction, I mean, with addictions, we're trying to cover up and mask pain.
yeah.
That's what addiction is all about, trying to
Mm-hmm.
mask pain. And so when you get stuck on somebody else, you're hoping that being stuck on somebody else will somehow relieve the pain,
Mm.
right?
But it doesn't. It just creates another problem. It
Oh
creates
yeah,
another layer to the
this
problem.
gets worse.
Yeah.
Here we are laughing at it, which makes us rather sadistic, but it's true. I mean, the pain just gets worse. It just gets worse. And I feel like I'm qualified to laugh because I caused myself 20 years worth of pain. And so, if there's anybody who can laugh at it, I certainly can because I went through it.
It's
Um,
true.
but I mean, it really, first of all, it shows just how much we're willing to harm ourselves.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? That we
Yeah.
just keep setting ourselves up over and over and over again. And we don't have to do that. We don't have to
No, we
do that.
don't.
No. Now, it does sometimes require us to kind of zero in on how we're hurting ourselves, being
Hmm.
aware of it, because it's
Yes.
not always obvious. Like I wasn't even aware at the time that I was automatically assuming that any woman I would meet wasn't going to want to be with me. I didn't
Wow.
realize doing that. Yeah,
Wow.
doing that. I was doing it every single time, but I had never made the mental connection.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing can happen. Of course, that's not necessarily the most common thing, but there are lots of
It
things like that.
it happens though.
It does happen. Yeah.
Hmm.
But what you can do, and what I ended up doing, was you can get help. You can get people to
Yep.
help you.
Hmm.
And interestingly enough, I went through therapy for about 9, 10 months,
Hmm.
and the therapy actually didn't get to the root of that, believe it
Yeah.
or not.
Hmm.
What actually happened is I learned in the therapy that 99 times out of 100, each time that I was feeling like it wasn't going to work out, it was because I thought there was something lacking in me or I was doing something wrong.
You didn't love
And
yourself.
I didn't love myself, but more than that, I really believed that I was just not lovable. I
Mm.
believed that I just could not succeed in a relationship, and there was something about me that was preventing that. What
Hmm.
I actually learned is it wasn't me.
Yeah.
It was me in the sense that I was just not being kind to myself, but
Right. Right.
I was getting involved with all these women who, the ones who would actually have some kind of relationship, and I barely can call it a relationship, was, and I mean that because they didn't last very long. But those few who I had something going on with were the ones who really didn't want to be in a relationship.
Okay, so you're choosing the wrong people based on the
Absolutely the wrong
fact
people
that
completely.
you weren't lovable.
Exactly.
Hmm.
I was very consistent about it too. And what did ultimately make a difference was throwing in the towel. I think I told you about that one time. That
Yeah.
literally
Hmm.
it got to the point where it was so painful. I threw in the towel. I was done, and then I met Louise a month later.
Yep.
And just that release of I give up on this whole thing was enough to throw away all that negative momentum I
Hmm.
built up
Yeah.
and allow me to come in. Good thing I did. Otherwise, I never would have met her. It wouldn't have
I
happened.
know, right? Exactly.
So even if we can't figure out exactly what it is that we're doing, we don't necessarily have to. All we have to do is, as best we can, follow our heart
Yeah.
and follow it down the best path we can follow it. And when it gets to the point where the pain is too much, then we just change direction.
Yep.
That's right.
Totally
Just
agree.
change
Yep.
direction. And I did, and it worked. And
Yep.
I said, "What the hell just happened?" That was my reaction. Like, I don't understand this. I've been trying to find somebody to connect with all these years, and all of a sudden, bang! It comes out of thin air. What the heck is that all about? Because I didn't know about law of attraction. I had no
Right.
idea how it worked. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like I go through all that, and of course that came to a conclusion almost 20 years ago.
Hmm.
And so I figure, okay, that ought to give me like a good background for talking to people who are going through it. But then I remember what it's like to be in that space, and I
Yeah.
go look at one of the various posts that are out there,
Hmm.
and look at the pain that they're in, and just kind of imagine what they're going through and what are their own things that they're doing and so forth. And I realized even when you're at the point that I am, where I've been through it and I could actually dole out some advice, they've got to be able to hear it.
Right. I was just gonna say that.
You know that they
You
got to
gotta
be.
have your listening ears on.
If you can't hear it, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta
You
be
know?
willing to take the advice,
Yeah. So
which you assume they are because they're asking, but
you would
they're
think
not all,
so, wouldn't
they're
you?
not always they're not always ready.
No, no.
They're not
Interestingly enough,
always
even when they're asking for help, they're not ready.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. They're not always ready to hear the truth, you know? They're ready to hear. I was watching a thing on Instagram about a guy who was saying somebody had posted that when your wife or your significant other is mad at someone else, she doesn't want you to use logic and reason. She wants you to be mad with her. So it's like it's kind of like that, you know what I mean? Like
Like, wait a minute, there's something wrong with that formula. What is?
she was like, she knows the truth. She knows what she needs to do, but she doesn't want to
Right.
hear that at that moment. She just wants you to be as equally upset as she is at the same person for the same reason. And I laugh so hard because it's kind of true.
It is. It's very true. Well, actually, one of the people who I had posted that I was reading today,
Hmm.
they had done this whole sob story. Everything was going wrong. And I mean, literally, it's a long list of things that were going wrong, and
Hmm.
had gotten a lot of responses on it. A lot of responses I thought were just really off base too. It's like they weren't even listening to what she was saying. But
Yeah.
one response was a pretty good one. It was from somebody who quite clearly had, quite a bit of experience in helping people and so forth. Probably was a
Hmm.
coach. At one point, the person pointed out that she was putting out this victim energy, which she was.
Mm. Hmm.
You should have seen the backlash. Oh my
Ooh.
goodness.
Yeah, you can't
Oh,
call
she
people a
questioned
victim these days.
her. Oh my goodness. Like, how dare you call me a victim? Now, never mind that I just spent, 5 paragraphs laying out everything that's wrong in my life. How dare you call me a victim?
I know, right?
Like, well, okay. So maybe we should call it a self-imposed victim? I mean, I don't know.
Right. How dare you define what I'm doing?
That's right. That was somebody who really had no interest at all in fixing whatever the situation was.
Right. They just wanted to bitch and complain
That
on
was it.
social media. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. So, hey, can't really help them too much, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So let's see, who can we help? What kind of questions can we address that are useful? I mean, we're going to assume that somebody who's asking the question actually wants to know the answer. I think that's a fair statement, don't you think?
I think on our podcast, people who ask the questions are like
Yeah, I
legitimately
think
looking for answers.
so. Yeah. So let's see, is there anything coming through here? Um, Wow, people are making some really interesting comments to each other, sharing interesting ideas and so forth. I don't really see a question or anything like that. Jeffrey says, thank you for the examples of being able to heal and move on to better things. It's not something men admit to.
Mm, facts.
Sometimes women too. But
No,
anyway,
big facts.
facts.
We're only human for a little while.
Yes, we are spiritual beings having that physical experience, and we're
Yep,
enjoying a minute of it. So,
yep.
all right. So let's see. What can we come up with? Let's do some hypotheticals here. Um, so let's
Hypothetical.
see. Okay, so we can't really go. Well, let's do the inverse of what your weekend is. You had a great weekend, right?
I
You had
did,
somebody
yes.
surprise you. Your mom had her birthday. You had a nice
Hmm.
party. You had the game to watch. All these great things were happening.
We
Let's
won the
turn that.
game, by the way.
We won the game, even better.
We're going to the
So,
Super Bowl. Fantastic. It was a nail biter.
so let's turn into the inverse of that. And I can recall a post that was kind of similar to this.
Hmm.
Nothing's going right.
Okay.
She's stuck at home. She has no job. Her
Hmm.
family doesn't love her.
Hmm.
She's miserable all the time. She has no boyfriend. She has nothing to do, nowhere to go. What should she do?
Okay, well, I would take baby steps and start building like little things. Like start with, going for a walk or doing something that you like to do. Do something that you enjoy and then start working towards, okay, what's a job that I think I would enjoy? And then go out and try to get it and work from there because then you're getting out. And I know it's ironic coming from me telling people to go out, but whatever. Yeah, everything's better when you go out. Not for me, but for you, great. so,
I love it. That's great.
but yeah, build upon your baby steps, and once you have a good job that you like, you're out and away from your family. That's so it's not causing you so much stress at home because you have something else in your life, and then you'll get happier and happier, and eventually you'll be exuding the type of personality that people will want to gravitate to, and then you'll get the good people in your life and you'll start to feel even better, and then you'll attract a boyfriend or whatever, or whoever you want to be with.
That's good. That's good. I like that. I would even add that if you're trying to attract people, whether it be a
Mm,
boyfriend or an employer or friends or whatever, that's where what we were talking about before makes a difference. Loving yourself. You
yes,
got to spend more time doing things to love yourself, I think. Because until
yes.
you do that, you don't get anywhere. Nothing ever
Hmm.
improves. Nothing ever um, gets better because you're what are you focusing on all the time? Well, you're focusing on all the things that are going wrong. You're focusing on
Right.
things that you don't like about yourself, about your life, and
Hmm.
so forth. It's being pretty rough on yourself after a while.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Being a
it's
Debbie Downer.
a Debbie Downer, yes, that's
Yeah,
right. Which is
a
not the
sad
best thing to
Sam.
do. Now, Nasha posted, she said there's some questions up above, so I basically have grabbed the entire chat and put it into a text thing to see if I can find where the questions are that she was talking about.
Well,
So
thank you,
let's
Nasha,
see.
for pointing that out because Walt is not
Yeah,
on top of his game today.
I am not. Well, actually, Nasha, if you're interested, maybe we could work something out so that you could be the official question gatherer, and you could kind of be
Ooh, yeah.
that'd be something, you know. So let's see. Well, first, let me see if I can just find uh, Joe. Uh, Nasha is lobbying for Didi to be on the show.
Yeah.
I love it. Let's see. How do you pop on audio only? Actually, Didi, you can do that by connecting as normal. And when you connect to the platform, it asks you to approve using your camera and your microphone. Just approve the microphone and don't approve the camera.
Yeah,
And
it
that
says like audio only or, audio and video. So you
exactly.
have options.
Yep. So let's see. Didi, should we ask one of the questions we were asking earlier? Nasha says, wants to know if religion was man-made
Definitely.
and hell and sin and
Oh
God
yeah.
is way bigger than that, and God torturing. God torturing. I've never heard that phrase, but yeah. Religion is man-made. You agree with that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I talk about this with my boyfriend all the time. Yeah, definitely man-made. Because it's like there are things in the Bible that I mean, I don't want to get, too into it, but, there are things in the Bible that are just a bit ridiculous, and only someone could have made this up. Like, who's the author of the Bible? Like, who, like, and who's, and then we're getting different versions of it. So it's like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know. So I feel
Yeah,
like it's
I always
definitely,
wondered about that.
yeah,
How could the Bible be the literal word of God, but
right.
the words keep changing depending on who you listen to?
Exactly. Exactly.
That always seemed a little strange to me.
So
And
there.
what was the inside edge that King James had? That's what I want to know.
Right?
I mean, seriously, that's the one that all the evangelicals point to. You have to go to the
Yeah.
King James version. Well,
Yeah.
what did King James have? You know,
Yeah.
what was his trick?
Was he on the ark? Like, what's going on? I need to know.
Yeah, there were two giraffes and there were two donkeys and there were two King Jameses. No, that doesn't make sense. Mr. and Mrs. James? No, no, that's not.
I'm
A silly mood today. You realize that, right?
in a silly mood every day.
Well, I mean, particularly silly today.
You know what it is? Because I'm drinking an energy drink. No, shameless plug.
Oh, all right.
I've become obsessed with these.
This version of Alex is brought to you by. Let's see. I'm not actually seeing the other questions, Nasha. I mean, I really do need your help. So what are the questions that you were talking about? Let's see.
Nasha, if you could be like the audience commentary person and just copy and paste the questions back to us and say who it's from, that'd be great.
Let's see. She says she'd love to do that. She'd love to be the person who's going to be doing that. That's good. And
Yay.
that's because God is way greater than our human beings. Ha 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 ha. God is greater than our small human minds.
Hmm.
What do you think?
I don't know about all that.
I guess it depends on how you define what God is.
Yeah.
Or God is, depending on how
Yeah.
you describe it.
I
Um,
mean, just because he was here first, that makes him better than the rest of us. But you're the original version, so I'm the updated version. What now?
you're definitely in a silly mood, no doubt about it. But you raise an interesting point. I mean, the theory is that God was here first. God created presumably himself, and then he started creating everything else, and then on the seventh day he rested. Okay,
Yeah. Hmm.
well, start with that premise, I guess. Is that an accurate depiction of God?
Right.
That is that what God is? Because I have to say it doesn't really fit my image of God.
Hmm.
My sense of what God is, I tend to go along with the Abraham Hicks version, which
Okay.
is that God is what we call God is actually the collective source energy of all the beings who are non-physical.
Hmm.
That and there are countless numbers of them. We're
Hmm.
talking way beyond hundreds of trillions. We're
Yeah.
talking humongous numbers, and that collective grouping, and it's kind of like the universe's great mastermind group, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
You know what a mastermind group is, right? You have a bunch of
Yeah.
people that all get together and we all focus on the same thing. Maybe we hash
Yep.
out a topic. Maybe we do a group healing, what we did a couple weeks
With
ago to help
Didi.
you
Yep.
and so forth, stuff like that. Well,
Hmm.
you get, billions and to use the Carl Sagan phrase, billions and billions. You get billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions all kind of working on the same thing, all focused on the same thing. You're going to
Yeah.
produce some pretty powerful stuff
Right.
no matter what you're talking about. It's going to be like
Hmm.
really, really powerful stuff. Well, that would be very godlike.
Well, my version of God is totally different, and that's because of the show Supernatural, where they do a lot of Bible lore, and there's actually a God on the show, and he's actually not so cool.
Oh, okay.
He turns out he's a deadbeat dad, and he has a sister that he put in the cage, like because all the angels have gotten together, and they're like, where is he? He's been gone for centuries, and nobody's seen him. So like, he's just a deadbeat dad, like. And then Lucifer's mad at him, so it's a whole thing, but it's a fantastic show to watch.
Okay. I'm not
So
sure
yeah.
how much clarity there is there, but certainly perhaps a little degree of passive aggressive hostility, but beyond that,
Yeah, a little
just a little bit.
bit. Oh. But I,
No, but seriously,
I do believe that God is, all knowing and omnipresent and all that stuff. But I stopped going to church when I was like 7. So I don't know much about religion. I'm more spiritual than religious. So I believe in like all the gods. So
all
that's
the
my
time.
all the gods.
What does that
Like
mean?
Greek gods, that Indian god with like a million legs, that elephant god with like a million legs. I don't know the names of them, but they're all fantastic.
They're all fantastic. Well,
They all
I'm glad
serve
to
a
hear that.
purpose for someone, so that's what I believe.
This is true. This is true. Yes.
Yeah,
And we're making a lot of fun, but God or gods are very important to people.
yeah, hmm,
They play a major role in people's lives, and I think it's
yeah,
important to remember that people don't choose to believe in God, just because that's something to do this weekend.
you're
This is
right.
something that's very big in people's lives, and they rely on God. They rely on their belief in God in order
Hmm,
to be taught what they believe is the right way to live, to get a feeling that there is a sense of order to the universe, that the universe actually makes sense, that life makes sense. I mean, I've been reading a book that Louis de Souza recommended to me, really obscure book
hmm,
by a woman named Elizabeth Heish, who
hmm,
lived in the 20th century in Europe. I
hmm,
don't remember which country she was from, but she she went through some really, really wild experiences, and she had a very different um, view of life from what I have. I mean, I had trouble understanding and even relating to a lot of what she went through because it was so different from
yeah,
not only my life, but from the life of anybody I know today. I mean, just
hmm,
really, really, really different.
yeah,
And that experience that she had really formulated her idea of God and of how the universe works in a way that was very clear when you read it.
yeah,
But it was just it was so different from anything that I know of that I could hardly even relate to it. And
hmm,
that's why I think it's so important to recognize people really do count on their belief in God for very definite reasons. It often matches up with their culture. It matches up with what they were taught growing up. It matches up with a large number of things in their lives. It's for a lot of people, it's where they get the idea of good and evil, and what's right and what's wrong. So it plays a major role in people's lives, and I don't think we'd be doing people a service if we ignored that, because that is a very
yeah.
big thing. Now, you mentioned that I kind of get the impression you do believe in God. Your idea of
Yeah.
God is not necessarily what the church's idea of God is,
I mean,
and
it
that's
is and it isn't. There's like
it is.
little. I pick and choose what I want to believe in
Hmm.
certain parts of the Bible or whatever.
Okay, okay. So, and that actually that's becoming more and more prevalent, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
People from a lot of different religions are kind of moving away from what their particular religious institutions teach and are
yep.
kind of
Making
developing
up
their
their
own
own
beliefs.
minds.
Yeah, which
Hmm.
is a good thing, I think.
And then
I
you
think
have the atheists who just don't believe in anything, and then I find them the most interesting to talk to because I'm like, okay, so you don't believe in heaven or hell, so where do you draw the line at like murder and like like what draws you for good and for evil? Like that's what the questions I have. So if there's
well,
any
I
atheists
can
listening
kind of
right
answer.
now, oh good.
I can kind of answer that because I'm not. I was never really sure whether I was atheist or agnostic. I kind of like dithered for quite some
Hmm.
time.
Okay.
But I can tell you that among the people I know who are atheists, there's never any doubt about what right and wrong is. They just don't think that has to be handed down from on high. They
Mm,
think that it's kind of self-evident what's right or wrong.
I totally
And
agree with that.
do you really? Okay.
Yeah.
I actually have a little doubt about, you know, what right and wrong being self-evident because I've also noticed that you look from one culture to the next and there are variations in it.
Mm,
So
yeah.
how self-evident can it be? Self-evident can it be if the different cultures can't even agree on what's right and what's wrong?
Hmm.
But I've also gotten to the point in my own development where I don't really pay all that much attention to right and wrong anymore.
Mm.
It's really strange for me because for the
Hmm.
longest time I was very obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it drove me. I was a very political human being, and it drove me politically. And so
Uh-huh.
for me to say now that I'm really not obsessed with right and wrong like I used to be is a pretty major statement.
Hmm.
But I'm not. And the reason I'm not is I have become more and more accepting of the fact that different people have different values and different belief systems. I don't
Right.
necessarily have to agree with them,
Right.
but I can accept them. I can accept
Yeah.
their differences. And if the differences are big enough that I feel like I'm not safe around them, then I will move elsewhere. You
Right.
know,
Remove
and I will
yourself. Yeah.
and I will literally vibrate at a different frequency from them anyway.
Yep.
So they don't tend to be around.
Hmm.
I've noticed lately there was a time where I would get lots of contact from people who were not of the same philosophical orientation or theological orientation of me, who were contesting and confrontational and so forth. And I
Hmm.
didn't really understand at the time why I was getting that on a regular basis. And then I started studying the law of attraction and how deliberate creation works,
Hmm.
and recognizing that I was attracting that, and started changing my mindset. I don't get anybody like that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the people that I used to be associated with, who I would find myself connected with, disappeared entirely.
Mm.
Just
Hmm.
completely disappeared, which I find to be very encouraging. I do. I find that to be very encouraging
Yeah.
because ultimately, the one thing that they all had in common, and a lot of them were atheists,
Hmm.
the one thing they all had in common was they were very, very certain about what's right and what's wrong.
Mm.
Very certain, to the point of
Okay.
being in your face about it.
Yeah. I find that a lot with atheists. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I can promise you they don't really need to have God handing down the rules to them. They're quite capable of developing them themselves.
Yeah.
They don't look for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, to me, what made the difference for me in terms of shifting my belief system was for the longest time, people had said to me, well, how do you explain the existence of everything? If you don't believe in God, how can you explain the fact that there's so much wonderfulness in nature and the miracle of the human body and all these other miracles that go on all the time? How can you explain all that? And I usually just kind of dismissed it like, oh, there's always just a logical explanation for all of this.
Hmm.
What made the difference for me was when I got to the point I was feeling very depressed, very disillusioned by
Hmm.
following the American dream, right? Of being the
Right.
hard worker and going out and building my career and all that kind of stuff. And it didn't lead to where I was hoping it was going to lead at all.
Right.
And that's what I realized. There's something wrong with the model.
Hmm.
The model just doesn't work. Well, if the model
Right.
doesn't, what does work? And with
Hmm.
Louise's help, I just started getting more in touch with what I felt
Hmm.
and with my senses.
Yeah.
And as I got more and more in touch with my senses, then I started to become more interested in and more appreciative of how wondrous life is.
Yeah.
But I had to go through that first. I had to go through
Exactly.
that trough, so to speak,
Hmm.
and notice just how separated I was from life in a sense. I
Hmm.
wasn't really separated, but it felt like
Yeah.
it. I had to go through that before I could finally say to myself, screw the whole thing about the American dream. That's a bunch of nonsense.
It
Let's
is.
replace let's replace it with what actually works. What actually
Hmm.
works? I don't know. Let's find out. And then I found out it's feeling.
What works? It's what works for you. Like
Yeah.
who cares what society says you're supposed to be doing it at some point in
Yeah.
your life? I had to let that go because that was burdening me for a long time. Like I was
Mm,
just so depressed that I wasn't at the status that I thought I was supposed to be because I was a certain age or achieving things
right.
that wasn't happening. Like, you're however many years old, you're supposed to be living on your own and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's not me, apparently. So once I let that go, I became so much happier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That makes a big difference. And
Hmm.
it's a combination of things. It's letting go of what other people are telling you to think,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's also letting go of beating yourself up when it isn't coming out right.
Right.
The
This
combination,
is, yep.
that combination is essential because when
Hmm.
you start trusting in here,
Yep.
what's feeling good in here, and following that and doing it in a way that's kind to yourself, you get an entirely different experience.
Exactly.
You know?
Hmm.
So I think we're in agreement. We're on the same path there in a
We are
sense.
on the same page.
So let's see. Well, Masha's been answering some of her own stuff here. She says, well, let's see. No, that I already read. Jeff asked, how do you raise your vibration? And how do you raise frequency? Okay, we can address those.
That's a good question because I don't even know.
Oh, it's really simple. First, you have to
Oh.
define what vibration is.
Hmm.
I have to say that confused me for the longest time
Yeah.
because I couldn't find any, for quite some time, I couldn't find any definition of what they meant by vibration.
I equate it with just feeling good, just a good feeling.
That's what it is.
Okay, good. So I'm right, as usual.
And the reason for that is that's actually a built-in measuring device, a barometer,
Yeah.
so it's, that we all have. We very often, I was one who was like this. We think that we really don't have a connection. You know,
Hmm.
we'll ask a question inside, we don't get an answer back, and so we
Yeah.
figure, oh, we're not getting any kind of input from inside, so all this inside stuff is a bunch of nonsense, and you can just
Hmm.
ignore it. But in
Hmm.
fact, the emotions and the senses, but especially the emotions, are our connection to my inner wall, to who I am inside, to that
Your IW.
the IW. That's right. And you like that one, I know.
I did.
But anyway, because we have that connection, any time that we're experiencing anything, we can just ask ourselves, do I like it or don't I like it? Does it feel good or does it not feel good?
Hmm.
And that is a way of measuring what's going on inside. Because if it feels good, that means I'm in
Hmm.
total agreement with my IW.
Right.
And if it doesn't feel good, it means I'm in disagreeing with my IW.
Hmm.
And that's what doesn't feel good. So all of a sudden now I have a way of knowing what my IW is telling me.
Hmm.
I mean, it may be a kind of primitive form of communication in the sense it's kind of like a yes no thing, but hey, it's a
Yeah.
communication, you know? Now I've got something I can work with.
Hmm.
So starting with that, I get an entirely different way of understanding life and
Hmm.
of understanding what it's like to connect inside and to get a sense of what it is that I really want in life.
Hmm.
When I follow that, I end up with a completely different route, a different path from the one that I was on before, and it's a much more pleasant route. It's a much more interesting route.
Yep.
But ultimately, to go back to the question, how do you raise your vibration? You raise yourself to a happier place.
Hmm.
And one of the big things that Abraham points out is when you focus on anything and you
Hmm.
stay focused on it, you get more of it. So when you focus on feeling happier and you stay on it, you get more to be happier about.
Yep.
And the more that you focus on that, the happier you get, the
Exactly.
better you feel. So you just keep
Happiness
focusing
begets
on
happiness.
it does. It develops its own momentum. That
Hmm.
momentum is what drives everything.
Yeah.
So how do you get to a higher vibration? By focusing on a higher vibration. It seems so silly. It seems so you just
It's
keep
just
focusing.
so simple.
I mean, we make it difficult, but it really isn't all that difficult. It's actually pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Oh, Didi's asking for a meeting ID. I'll give her the meeting ID. It's actually built into the link, Didi, but I'll just type it out for you.
Type, 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 type.
There we go. So she's got the meeting ID. And then
Yay!
it was vibration and it was something else too. What was the other thing?
What was
Vibration.
it?
It was basically the same thing. I just don't remember what the other word was.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it here. Wow, there's so much conversation. It gets. I really do need to have somebody who's just monitoring the chat just to pull the questions out because there's so much conversation now going on, which is great. I'm loving it. But it does get kind of hard to follow and figure out where are the questions again? They're in here somewhere. I know they are.
I just saw Deidre light up.
Oh, yeah, we do have a third person here. There she is. Let me see if I can unmute her. Well, I can do half of it. You're gonna have to do the other half, Didi. You'll have to unmute your microphone. There's a little button for that. But once you do that, we'll be able to hear you. But while you're finding that, let me see if I can find. Jeffrey says he prefers Buddhism. Yeah, a lot of people do.
Right.
Let's
It's
see.
the most peaceful, I think.
Yeah, it's peaceful. It is.
I think I got it.
There she is.
Yay! Hi,
Hi.
Jennifer.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. I'm so excited to be talking to you guys.
I'm excited that you're feeling good after all the stuff that you've gone through. I mean,
Oh,
first of all,
yeah,
congratulations
absolutely.
for
Thank
manifesting all that
you.
health. But it's
Yeah.
so good to have you here after all that. This is great.
Thank you so much.
I mean, I can hear in your voice how excited you are about it because I mean,
Yeah.
I always sound like this, Walt. I
That's
always
what I'm
sound like
trying to
this.
tell Walt.
Wow, it's so good to meet you guys.
Well, it's good to meet you too.
I mean, I do feel like we do know you because we keep seeing your
Right.
chat and
I
seeing your
know, I
comments
feel the
and so forth.
same.
So, what do you think? I mean, we've been going off in all kinds of directions here about God, the universe, and everything. But why don't you take your stab at answering Jeffrey's question? What's the best way to raise your vibration?
Do something that you absolutely love. Really get into that feeling. For me, it's like listening to music. I can listen to some good music and actually start crying because it just feels so good.
Oh,
Hmm.
wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah, but whatever works for you in that way, Jeffrey, go for that. Go for that.
I
That
think that's a good
vibration
answer.
is actually pretty simple, isn't it? Once you
Yeah.
It
understand,
is.
I mean, did it take you a while to figure out what they meant by vibration? It took me like months.
Um, I don't think it did. I don't think it took me a while to figure that one out. I
Yeah,
figured it was just like Alex said, just feeling good,
hmm
feeling really good, and I kind of got it.
See, this is where I feel like sometimes I'm way behind the curve and I'm catching up.
Because sometimes you try to make things more complicated when it's really just so simple.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, part of it is just definitions. I mean, early
Hmm.
on when I was hearing, especially the Abraham Hicks teaching and also the Neville Goddard teaching,
Mm,
especially there, you really have to know what the definitions are. But
mm.
I would hear the words being spoken, and I would use the words the way I always knew them to mean, and I'd say, "That's meaningless. What on earth are you talking about?" It just didn't match up. So yeah, you almost need a glossary. You almost
Yeah.
need a some sort of thing. This is replace this word with that word, and now it will start to make sense for you. And when I first
Yes.
heard that, replace the word vibration with feel good, oh, well, why didn't they say so?
So you need like a law of attraction thesaurus.
I
Like this
do.
word, this
Exactly.
word also means this word.
Yes. Maybe I'll create one. Yeah, that would be interesting.
There you go.
Hmm.
And like you guys always say, the Neville Goddard decoder ring.
The decoder.
Yes.
That's right. Well, my decoder ring is called Cindy Chavez, but
There
it's a
you go.
valuable piece of information to have that decoder ring because, I mean, you can learn it yourself, clearly.
Mm,
If you go through the Neville books and you go through them, painstakingly, and every time that he draws a connection saying, when I'm saying this, I really mean that, you almost have to write it
Yes.
down and then make a list of them. And if you do
yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that's basically making your glossary, right? You can
Hmm.
start
Hmm.
that way. But there's also a piece of me that says, why are we making it so complex?
Mm,
Right? I
Wow.
mean, why
yeah.
make it so difficult? Is this is this a treasure hunt game?
But Neville does tend to make it difficult. I guess it's the time that he was, speaking in, 30s, 40s, 50s, or whatever.
Right.
And being, an Englishman or British or Islander, he uses certain language
hmm
that we
Mm,
just don't get sometimes. So
Well,
he
plus he
takes
was also
decoding.
very devout. He was a very devout Christian,
Yeah.
and
mm,
he had taken Christian teaching as it was presented at that time and translated it into his own thought process. But he felt really loyal to that teaching. And I
Hmm.
suspect it has a lot to do with that guy Abdullah, who we only know of by name, but apparently
Yeah.
he was his main teacher, and that's where
Hmm.
Neville got a lot of his insights from. And I feel like if we knew more about Abdul, it would make a whole lot more sense why Neville presented material the way he did. But the
Exactly.
best explanation I can figure is he was using the language of the day where religion was concerned.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So,
He also followed someone named William Blake. I don't know much about him,
oh, Blake,
but
yeah, Blake is a famous
yeah.
British poet and author. Yeah,
Okay. Was he a poet or something?
he was a poet and an author. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm trying to think what time frame he was. I I don't want to guess. My
Hmm.
inclination is to say 19th century, but I don't know that for a fact. So,
Mm.
Okay.
yeah, but look him up. There's I mean, you can find actually all of his work online if you really want to.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was
Good.
fairly prominent. He is not at all in the spiritual realm. He's much more of a mainstream author, so you can find a lot of stuff
Oh,
about him. Yeah.
okay.
So, how about you? Can you come up with a pressing question for us to try to answer? We're always trying to come up with these questions to make the interesting
Nasha
conversation.
and I were talking all morning. In fact, after the podcast ended this morning, we
Hmm.
took like a 30-minute break and we were talking the rest of the time up until about an hour and a half ago. So we
Oh my
talked
goodness!
about a lot of
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, I should say.
Yeah, so I was asking her, bring up some of the things that we talked about this morning because they were really interesting and deep. So let's see what we can do. Let's see what we
Okay.
can do. Nasha, you remember any of the questions that we talked about this morning or the topics that we talked about?
I'm looking at some of the stuff that's been typed. There's a lot of stuff in the chat right now. I
Hmm.
mean, seriously, there is a lot of stuff in the chat. I'm seeing Jeffrey saying he was qualifying his earlier question about raising vibration. The question was really about what's our favorite way of raising vibration.
Oh,
Hmm.
okay.
So what's your favorite way of raising vibration, Alex?
My favorite, watching TV and dancing in the shower, listening to music and dancing in the shower. That's my favorite way. And organizing things. I like to clean and organize.
Hmm.
Good. Those are good. My favorite way is to do a twice daily podcast called LOA Today. I'm serious. I love this.
Yeah,
So you get a double dose of
I do.
happy.
I get a double dose every single day. Yeah.
yeah. It does
I
make
get
me
the
feel
journey.
good to be on this podcast because I feel like I'm helping people. So I do,
Mhm.
I'm doing my part.
Yeah.
I feel like we're building a new kind of community too, because
Hmm.
there are lots of law of attraction communities, but this one has a feel to it that I never really thought about in terms of building a community until now. But in a sense,
Hmm.
we are.
Yeah.
We're attracting in a whole bunch of like-minded people who have, at least some degree of personal development, learning how to apply this stuff in their lives,
Yep.
creating a really interesting dynamic.
Hmm.
All these minds working on the topic at the same time, even though it's just a couple of us usually on screen, you know,
Yeah.
doing the conversation. But you can
Hmm.
see, I think what's making me thinking about that is looking at all the commentary that's going on in the comments section.
Right.
There's a lot going on there. When you think about, try to imagine it in terms of like the mastermind concept, where you have all these minds focused on a general topic all at once and all coming in with their own ideas and
Yeah.
inspirations and thoughts and so forth. That's what's going on here. And that's
Hmm.
pretty good stuff. It's not like
Yeah.
the law of attraction group where you're getting people coming in saying what we were talking about before, my life is so miserable, all these things going on.
Yeah.
So no, everybody who's involved here is energized and alive and focusing on positive and feeling good and having good things happening and
Hmm.
manifesting. That's pretty cool,
Yeah. I agree.
you know?
One of the questions that Nasha has is how our old beliefs limit the truth of what God is.
Hmm. Okay. How our old beliefs limit the truth of what God is.
Yes, and she says like how can he seem to be so unkind in instances,
Mm.
like destroying people,
Hmm.
um, things like that.
I think it also partly goes back to what your definition of God is. What, like we were
Yeah.
nonsensically talking about before, we were being silly about it.
Hmm.
It's actually a very serious question. What do you think God really is? Because
I mean,
otherwise,
Well, I
we're going to run into collisions where you'll have different people who have a different concept of what God is, and they're going to say, "No, God is this. No, 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 God is like this. Well, God's going to behave like that.
Mhm.
No, God's not going to behave like that. God's going to behave like this," because they have different conceptions of what God is.
everybody comes from different walks of life and has different beliefs. So we could have that conversation for like 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, really.
right.
You know?
But in terms
Like,
of,
do you guys?
no, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Do you guys believe that God is the creator of the universe and us, and you know,
Well,
I
we
do.
define
you
God.
do?
Alex and I just a few minutes ago we were giving our own conception of what God is, and
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
in many ways they were quite different. You know,
Hmm.
so you ask me, do I think that God is the creator of the universe? I'll say yes, but what I mean by that is completely different from what, say, the Christian Church says that
Yeah.
God is,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
what that
I'm the
Mm-hmm.
same way.
you know. So are we saying the same thing?
Yeah.
I think we are, because I'm on the same page as you guys.
I believe
Oh,
that God did create everything, but I also believe that he started with evolution. So, like, from the simplest bacteria to what we are now. I
mm-hmm.
believe that's where he started. So I believe that in God and evolution at the same time. So I'm a contradiction amongst myself.
How about you, Didi? What do you think?
I think yes, that he is the creator of all. I don't necessarily believe in evolution. I don't really understand it though. Um, but
That's okay.
a
Charles
question
Darwin
that
didn't
I
understand evolution too much.
Charles Darwin.
a question I do have though is, do you guys think that there is a difference between being religious and being spiritual? I always say I am not at all religious, but that I am spiritual.
I think
I
there's a
say the
huge,
same thing. Yeah, there's a big
Okay.
difference.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like being religious is like, you believe in a certain thing, you go to that place of worship every week or however many days of the week you have to go. Being spiritual, you believe that God is everywhere, so you don't have to go anywhere to see him.
Yeah. And he's within you. That's what I believe. He's within.
Exactly.
So, right. So why do I have to go and sit in someone's church, you know?
Exactly. Somebody's saying what
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see it that we are all I made the joke earlier, and it's a very common one. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience, which we
Yes.
are. But the
Hmm.
key word there is spiritual beings. We are spiritual beings.
Yes.
It's not
Yes.
like we have to join the spiritualist movement. We
Right.
already are.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to join. We're already there, you know.
Right.
So, am I a spiritual being is almost redundant.
Mm. Yep.
Yes, I mean we are. We're all
Yes.
spiritual beings. Does that mean we're religious? Not necessarily.
Nah,
Some of
not
us
all of
are.
us. No.
Some of us aren't. You know, some of us couldn't care. The main question is, I mean, I think mankind as a whole has long wanted to know the answers to the ultimate questions, right? Where do we come from? You
Yeah.
know,
Mm-hmm.
what created all this? Who created all this? Is there a who? You know, all this kind of stuff. Now, where did the
Hmm.
universe come from? How did the universe start? Did it start with a big bang? Did it start some other way? Was it a small, whimper? What was it? How did
Small
all these?
whimper. Well, I can't. A big bang or a small whimper.
Well, I mean, we're constantly told that we should be trying to push the simple button, right? We make things too
Mhm.
difficult for ourselves. Well, maybe Big Bang is making it too difficult. Maybe it is a whimper. Maybe it's just a little quiet, poof, and then everything
Yeah.
just comes into existence. Maybe it doesn't have to be this cataclysmic boom.
And then life started. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, who knows? The point is, though, because we've had all of these ultimate questions, people have tried to answer them,
Hmm.
and that kind of ties into what we talked about earlier. How you answered it, and I agreed with you that man created religion.
Hmm.
In a sense, man created God
Hmm.
in one
Mm-hmm.
sense. And I think there's a lot of truth to that because man was trying to answer ultimate questions.
Hmm.
and I don't ever see that ending. So,
No,
will
we gotta
religion
blame
go away? I
somebody
don't think religion's ever going to. I think religion's going to be with us for, the
till the
foreseeable
end of
future.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to keep coming and coming and coming. And the good news is you don't have to sign up. But if you want to,
Right.
That's right.
if you
Hmm.
want to sign up, it's there. They'll take
Yep.
you.
Yeah.
They'll turn you into an evangelist. I mean,
Oh,
it's entirely up to you. So, did we answer the
Do
question,
exactly.
you,
Didi?
yeah, I have another question. Do you guys think that religion was created to control people?
I
I
don't
think
think that
religion
was
is
a
used.
necessary. Oh, what were you saying, Walt?
I think it's used to control people. I think a
Yeah,
lot of
Yeah.
people have
I
gone through it
agree.
to control people. I wouldn't
Okay.
want to say necessarily that the people who originated a religion, whether it
Hmm.
be a Jesus or a Muhammad or whatever, that their original intent was to control people, because it's kind of like the game of telephone, where you
Mm-hmm.
just person whispers to
Mm.
you, so on and so forth. There's been a lot of whispering going on for a lot of centuries.
Yeah.
For me to kind of look at the end result of that whispering and say, well, I know what the original thought processes were of the people who were starting it, that would be really
Hmm.
presumptuous.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened at the very beginning. All I know is
Hmm.
that what historical record has told us is that over and over again, people do take advantage of religion in order to control other people.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
totally agree. I was going to say the exact same thing.
Hmm.
Well, then I should just shut up and let you say it. I mean, you need to talk about
Me.
No, I'm just teasing you.
I
How are we doing on the
know.
questions? Have we got any more to answer for you, Didi, or for Nasha?
Nasha, let's see. I see Linda is here.
Hi, Linda. You can
Hey,
drop in too if
Linda.
you like. I mean, this platform can handle 100 people, so really feel free.
It's an all people party.
It's an all people party. It really is.
More the merrier.
There had to be more questions, though, that you guys discussed during your 4 or 5 hours that you were talking.
Right?
We did.
I mean, can you think of any? What were you talking about that was, it doesn't even have to be a question, now, it's just an interesting topic.
It was mainly about God.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys come to any
Mm.
conclusions of your own? Maybe something different from what we've been talking about?
She was asking the question, how can he seem so unkind? Like stories in the Bible talk of destruction and him killing, destroying the world, basically.
Yeah.
And how can that be if he's all love? How can that be?
Personally, I
Sometimes.
reject the idea that the Bible is the written word of God.
I do
Hmm.
too.
I don't think the Bible is any more the word of God than any other book
Yeah.
and any less. I think they are
Hmm.
all equally the word of God. And if
Yeah.
you understand it that way, then it becomes clear, well, it was a human being who wrote that.
Right.
And
Mhm.
human beings
Mhm.
we're all connected to and all part of God. So
Hmm.
did God write it? Well, I guess in a sense, human being wrote it. We're all connected to God. So in that sense, yeah, it's the word of God. But I wouldn't take it as the word of God, the one
Yeah.
and
Right.
only, the final word on everything. I wouldn't take it that way.
Yeah.
There are a lot of
Mhm.
people who will do whatever they can to just pull the wool over your eyes for their own benefit.
Hmm.
Exactly.
I think that's what happened with a lot of the Bible. I learned that pretty early when I read the Bible when I was 14. My cover to cover
Mhm.
thing. I almost didn't finish, by the way. I got about two-thirds of the way through it, and I was practically sick in the bathroom with what I was.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Oh.
Wow.
It was bad. And then I got to I thought, well, maybe the New Testament's going to be better, so I'm in the New Testament. It was marginally better, but only marginally. And then I get to Revelation. I can't handle it. This is like a horror movie with a sci-fi twist to it.
Yes.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
I did
Yeah.
finish though.
I tried to read the Bible once, on a recommendation of a friend of mine, and he was like, "Yeah, have you ever like just sat down and just read through it?" So I was like, "All right, I'm gonna crack this thing open, dust it off. I haven't touched it in years. Let me see what happens." And then I got about 3 pages in, and I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm good."
I love
I
it.
was like, "No, no." No, not for me. So
Oh,
let me know when the movie comes out. I'll be
well, actually, what
And
you
you
want?
know,
You want
if
the
it was
show to
his
come out
work,
so you
it
can
wouldn't
review
be
it.
that way.
right.
Yes, that's true. That's well, I'm sure when the show does come out, Alex, you're going to be the first one to review it. So,
Darn Skippy, always on it. Like I said, the closest I've come to is so far is Supernatural and their version of it. So it's hilarious in its own right, but they make a lot of good points.
yeah, it sounds like the points are like jab, jab, jab too.
They are and they aren't like it's just how I'm saying it at the moment because I can't go through the whole 14 seasons right now. Like,
This is true. Yes, that
you
is
know.
accurate. Oh my. Well, I'm seeing that the allocated time of an hour is long past, so I think we'll probably have to draw it to a conclusion here. But first, I want to say thank you, Didi, for having the bravery to come onto the platform and talk to us.
Thank you,
Lovely to
guys.
actually talk to you. This is great.
You guys too.
And I want
Aw.
people to come on too because this isn't just this isn't the Walt and Alex show. This is let's talk about this stuff. So I
Yeah,
want to
everybody come join.
yeah, we'll
All
just have a big
right.
party. And
Well, I'm
want to
here now, and I'm not going away.
you're not going away? Okay. Well, I can tell you I won't be back on the platform till tomorrow morning, so have fun. You know?
And I gotta go do my hair, so I got things to do.
All right.
With that crazy thought in mind, I will say to everyone, we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.